Hmm. Well, it is quite different. What you have to understand is the actual mentality at the time and what was deemed to be a fashion or a scene or a way of a genre. And in the early 80s, making pop music, there were certain kind of rules. You didn't have to go by the rules, but there was a kind of a perimeter, if you like, and that was like no long solos,
right?
Because any kind of virtuosity or kind of what we would call shredding or kind of ego, that wasn't kind of permitted and that was sort of quite frowned on. Everything was condensed. The sort of the art form was saying something, saying it very concisely, so that you wouldn't go off into like a sort of 5-minute musical escapade. And obviously the kind of patterns were quite simple. There wasn't time signatures. It was quite 4/4 most things. Maybe Stranglers would do things in 7 or 5 sometimes, but that was about it. Of course, with progressive rock, which is music that I loved as well as a teenager, it's completely different. It's an open book, and the song will go on as long as you want the song to go on, and you expand, and everybody's given a musical freedom, and so everything evolves slower, I would say. And obviously, I like both. But for me, sometimes the genius is in something that is really concise. So, like a track like "God Only Knows" by the Beach Boys. I mean, it's the most incredible arrangement. It just goes through everything, and at the end, you realise that the track only lasted 2.5 minutes. Some people haven't started the track before that. The intro's still going on. So yeah, both very different. Well, kind of from my point of view, the strength of Porcupine Tree is the people involved in it and the differences between us. So what I brought to Porcupine Tree was non-musicianship, basically. I'm not a technical musician, so as much as I like progressive rock, I couldn't really play it if I tried, because it's beyond me technically. So it was almost like Eno being in a progressive rock band or something. I mean, that's the kind of school I'm from, really. More about kind of abstract sound and texture and kind of atmosphere. On the other hand, we've got a drummer who's like an unbelievable technician. Musically, he can do anything. So I think the contrast is quite nice, and I think that's what gave Porcupine Tree a slightly different feel to them than the usual neo-progressive rock bands. So I think that's enabled that particular band to kind of branch out into different directions and remain kind of quite contemporary sounding, even though it's progressive. That's a good question. Obviously, because you're talking to somebody who is a band member and more of what you'd call a team player, and a lot of my enjoyment over the years has come from the collaborative side and kind of enjoying things as a group of people. But to be a front person or to be a solo artist, you need a different kind of mentality that separates you a little bit from that. And so it's always interesting, but there can be conflict, because in a way they're often kind of, let's say, self-interested. I wouldn't say obsessed, but that they have personal ambition, which is no bad thing at all. So I mean, for them it's probably hard to keep the group thing going, and for the group members sometimes it's hard as well. But that's how it's always been. I mean, you look at any band, there's usually some kind of artistic tension, maybe Pink Floyd, Beatles, Who. There's always a bit of a kind of friction going on, and it's part of what makes the whole thing work, to be honest. I'd say I probably get on with Steve Hogarth best of all of those, in that although he has the ego and the front to do something like that, we kind of have quite a good laugh as well. Well, it's always interesting for me because I've worked with so many different musicians. I've worked on like sort of jazz albums. I've worked on kind of quite bluesy stuff, some middle of the road things. I've worked with a lot of different musicians. It doesn't really change the way I approach it. And what probably my strength is that what I do in context to what the other people are doing and what the overall kind of feel of the music is. So I think it's one of the best I think it's probably our best album. I'd say that and Fear of a Blank Planet is definitely the best too. So I loved it. I mean, Steve was probably quite influenced by Opeth at the time, a Swedish band, which was a kind of progressive metal. So he was getting into more heavy guitars, and I could function within that quite well. I enjoyed it. You know, sometimes it's not as much for you to do, but I can step back. You know, I don't play for the sake of playing. It's very important to understand about space when you're working with other musicians, and I really like that album. Well, I kind of keep going back and forth. I tend to have, like you'll probably see later, I kind of have a bit of everything. I'm always going back to the really vintage synthesizers and electronics, because there's just, that can't seem to be recreated. Although there's a huge fashion at the moment with these kind of boutique synths that are modelled on all these old analogues. It's not quite the same. And I love that kind of primitive technology as well. But of course I also work with computer software instruments. So the two sit quite nicely side by side. In terms of, I'm not sure. I'm one of those people who wait to see what happens, and then I usually embrace the technology of the day and try to do my own thing with it. But I'm equally happy working with limitations. I think what I'd like to try to do more is kind of to stop watching the screen so much. You know, it's what everybody does when they make music now. You're watching your computer screen. There's a lot of kind of copy and paste, and you're seeing your arrangements, and in the end you're looking too much and not really listening. Because the way we used to make music was, you never saw that music, did you? You never saw a representation of it. There was just a tape machine in the corner, and it would all be about how you reacted to it by listening. And that's kind of quite overlooked these days, because it does make it very easy to take shortcuts. Well, I think you have to kind of put yourself on the line a little bit, and maybe slightly away from your comfort zone. So even like doing something like this today, I've no idea how this is going to turn out. But something will happen. I'll be doing something that I wouldn't have thought that I was going to do. It's not planned to a degree where I've rehearsed something, I know everything's going to happen. There's a basic background sort of idea, but so even just setting up your gear in a different environment and working gives you something different, and in a way you're out your comfort zone. As you are working with other people in studios, you know, you're kind of under pressure to a certain degree. So I think you have to sort of challenge yourself to be able to work when it doesn't always feel, you know, 100% comfortable to you. Put yourself in strange sort of situations. And I think, you know, as in life, that you learn from these things.